Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Chloe and today I'm going to be talking about finishing my PhD part 2, practical steps. Part 1 to this video, I'm going to link it below, check it out. It tells a lot of my backstory and sets the context of today's video. To do a little recap, I went back to university after my internship in Silicon Valley and I found myself in a state of complete panic. My thesis deadline was around the corner. I had so much work left to do on my PhD thesis. I had no conference papers accepted and I still wasn't 100% convinced I knew what my research question was. On top of that, I had an offer of employment which was specific on me starting at a particular date, so the clock was really ticking. Step 1. I submitted a request to extend my submission deadline. Each university has their own procedure in place where a student can apply for an extension request. These are not flippantly given out, but if you can show that you've had genuine delays to your research, then you can put together a case. To do this requires a bit of paperwork. You need to speak to your PhD supervisor and find out and map out how much work needs to be done. You then need to submit a realistic timeline of how long all of this work is going to take you. Provide as much evidence as you can to support this request. The type of delays you can report will depend on each university, so please check your own university requirements. But generally speaking, these things are extenuating circumstances, like if you've had time away from your research because of work or an illness. This illness can also be stress-related time off. Also, if you've had a bereavement, even down to things like computer facilities being broken and so delaying your experiments and research. There are a lot of genuine reasons, but remember, you have to provide evidence to every claim you make, so please don't try and play the system. They will see right through you. I found that being honest with my administration staff and my supervisor was just the best way. If I can give you one tip, it would be to not underestimate the time it's going to take you to complete a task. You do not want to find yourself in the same situation I found myself in, where I had to apply a second time for an extension. Once you submit, it takes a number of weeks for your application to go through the various departments, and then you'll get the response of if you got the extension request and if so, your new deadline date. Be aware that if your new deadline date goes into the next academic year, you may have to pay continuation fees, and these are going to vary. They're usually a few £100s, but you need to check with your university and administration as to how much that's going to be. Finally, and I think most importantly, don't feel disappointed or disheartened if you find yourself in a position where you have to apply for an extension request. It's actually super common in postgraduate study, and you ultimately want to be able to produce your best work for your thesis. There is nothing wrong with prioritizing the quality of the content of your thesis over the time it took to produce it. Step 2. If, like me, you feel really stressed about this whole procedure, go to your student services. Request some time with a counsellor or a therapist. This was the best decision I've made. Your university will be able to offer you some level of counselling or therapy free of charge in a realistic time frame, and it can make such a difference to the progress of your PhD. It is close to impossible to produce your best work when you're feeling stressed or anxious, and so use the services that your fees pay for and get some help from people who know exactly how to help you. Stress occurring during a PhD is more common. In fact, I think it's the norm, but managing your stress and putting your mental health first should always be your #1 priority, even if it does mean you graduate a year later. At least you'll be graduating with yourself intact. Step 3. Sort out your thesis template. How are you going to write your thesis? Is it going to be on LaTeX, Word, Pages? How are you going to write the text? For me, LaTeX is absolutely the best option and worth the overhead of learning how to create documentation in LaTeX. I cannot recommend enough that if you work in any type of scientific or technical field, that you learn how to create this documentation in LaTeX. It makes it so much easier for you in the long run. There are loads of resources, tips and templates on LaTeX, and I'll be doing a video on this real soon. Look up your school's handbook. In this handbook, you will find specific requirements for your thesis with information like font size, what font you should use, whether it should be double or single line spaced, how you should indent your paragraphs, what margins you need for your thesis. You'll also find things about the maximum and minimum word count for your specific score. Download a template, look up your thesis requirements, and then edit this template so that it matches the requirements for your specific score. You could also spend some time styling the template, so you can look at things like, how is the cover page going to look? Are you going to include your school logo? What does the contents page look like? What kind of number system are you going to use? Are you going to include page numbers? These are all of the finer details of your thesis. Obviously, these details are not the priority when you have a lot of work to do for your thesis, but they have to be done at some point. And if you're really struggling with motivation and you just need to get started, this can be a really good introductory task so that you can get the architecture of your thesis together. This is the kind of productive, achievable task that I like to set myself when I'm really struggling with motivation. It can be done in a day or two. I'm going to add in an optional step 3.5 here. This is not really a necessity, but it's something that I found really useful when I was in the planning stages of my thesis. What I would do is I would look at other people's theses that were relevant to the area of study that I was working in, and I would note down 2 points: how long the thesis is, as in number of pages, and what does their contents page look like. I found it really useful to find out the average number of pages that are produced in a thesis for my area of study, because this varies depending on the topic that you're studying, and it could be 200 pages or it could be 400 pages. For me, it was good to know what I'm aiming for. Also, by observing people's contents page, I was able to find a generalized structure for my area of study, which then helped for the next step. Step 4. Draft an outline of your thesis. Now that you've got your template together and it fits the requirements for your school, start putting together chapters, sections, and subsections. If you do find the time to go through step 3.5, you will already have a generalized idea of what the different sections in your thesis are going to look like. This structure is just your starting point. Don't get too strung up on titles and organization, because I guarantee you this is going to change about 5 to 10 times before you actually submit. What this task does is it gives you an idea of what work you have done already and what needs to be done. Step 5. Get the research finished. Your PhD is essentially 3 chunks. You have the research element, the write-up element, and then the defense of your thesis. If you are struggling with time, the most important thing is to conclude the research. Find the time to finish your experiments and find the answer to your research question. The write-up is time-consuming and difficult, but if you had the most beautifully written thesis with no substance, then you're gonna crash and burn. So once you get your template together, write a list of what needs to be done to finish the research element of your PhD. In my next video, I'll be looking at time management strategies and how I will deconstruct my thesis to identify gaps in my research story. So please subscribe to my channel and look out for my next video. Feel free to drop a like or a comment below, and have a beautiful day.